Hey everybody, welcome to this issue of Staffing Monthly. I'm Dan Morey, and we talk about all things staffing operations and staffing sales and really bring you the actionable insights to help you grow your business and hit your goals. And if you are like most agencies in the industry this year, you realize that it is getting harder to sell, it's getting harder to recruit, and you're starting to realize the headwinds of attrition. And I came across an interesting data point that I'm going to share in a minute that I felt like we as an industry needed to discuss this, and it's around candidate attrition. But before we do, I want to welcome our guest to the show today, somebody that I have the utmost admiration and respect for, because not only is he adding value to the industry, he's actually focusing in an area that is often overlooked, and he's making it easy for agencies to get their arms around it. And it's my good friend, David Folwell, who is the founder of Staffing Referrals. David, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey Dan, great to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you as always, man. And I got to tell you, the reason that I reached out sort of on short notice is because I had, I don't want to say an epiphany because I felt this for a while, but I actually had a staffing leader come to me. We were reviewing their metrics, doing their quarterly review stuff, and they had an alarming discovery that I felt needed to prompt this conversation. So I'm going to share the data point, the finding, and then I want to discuss with you what this means and what we got to do about it. So for those listening, this is the setup. Staffing leader doing their quarterly review, looking at things. One of the metrics that we look at is, headcount attrition, reasons for attrition, duration of assignment, and we compare these things year over year. And she noticed that her average duration of assignment last year was 12 days longer than this year. That in and of itself was alarming. But when we parsed the data and we started looking at candidate source, what we found was fascinating. 80 to 90% of her candidates were coming from job boards, and the other 10 to 20% were coming from networking or referrals or out of the database, right? This was alarming. The 80 to 90% of her candidates that were placed that came from job boards, the duration of assignment had actually shrunk to a nauseating number, but way greater than just 12 days. A number that was so far lower than just that 12-day delta that the referrals, the networking, the database, those were sort of buoying it at that new number. And she was like, holy cow, I'm paying a lot of money for job board talent. And I'm not saying job boards are bad. That's not what I'm going here. She's like, I'm paying a lot of money here and I'm not delivering the value to my clients that they rely on me for. So I said, well, what does the data look like for the other sources? Let's be fair, apples to apples. Let's look at referrals. Let's look at networks. Let's look at database, redeployment. And she found something that the ones that were referrals, and David earmuffs here, she doesn't actually have a really robust referral program. It's kind of happenstance. But the
Yeah,
referrals were lasting longer. The placement data was better. And I'm like, you know what? I want to share this information, and then I wanted to talk to you. So that's the setup. I know that's bigger than normal, but that's what I'm running into. That's the cause for this. What are you seeing out there as far as referrals? You've got hard data. You measure this. So is she alone? Is she an outlier, or is this happening?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think and we'll jump into the data specifically on referrals, but you kind of started with, it's like we're in a world right now. It's harder to get job orders. It's harder to get placements. And healthcare staffing, it's 4 times harder to get a placement. You're having to submit 4 times as many candidates to get a placement. So we're in this world where when you do get a placement, when you have the opportunity, you want to make sure it's as profitable as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And you want to source strategically and think about it strategically. And what you're talking about is it's just strategic sourcing. It's looking at what in the software world we call it customer lifetime value by source, and then optimizing your strategy based off of where you can be most profitable. When it comes to staffing, what we're seeing is on average, referrals are staying on contract anywhere from 30% longer up to we have a case study with WSI, and they said that they were seeing a 350% increase versus their Indeed hires. Referrals were literally going to work and stay, which I don't think that's the norm, but like
Wow.
when people are referred, they're going to work with a friend. They're going to work somewhere where their buddy thinks they're a good fit. And so they're going to stay on contract longer. They're going to redeploy at a higher rate. And that's because they're higher quality talent. So it's like in this world right now where we're like, we know we're only going to have 1,000 placements this year. and we've got to figure out how to increase profitability. There's not a whole lot of options. There's not a whole lot of levers to pull, but one of the levers you can pull is deciding where are you going to focus your sourcing efforts and being strategic about it and making sure you're focusing on referrals because they consistently deliver these results. Over 100 staffing firms that use our software, and like it's every time I look at the data, I'm blown away. Every time I show somebody the data, they're like, "This is amazing. I had no idea." And it's the redeployment and retention rates on it are significantly higher.
So I've seen that data firsthand, and I wanna call out another guy that's actually I interviewed for the same month here, Dan Mastropolo. He mentioned the same thing too, and he actually talked about the two things is that he's advising clients on, and he works with hundreds of staffing agencies. I think under his consult is like nearly what 1% of the entire industry, which is like 2 billion of revenue, which is pretty impressive that he's really having them focus on redeployment and referrals because that's where they're getting the biggest lifetime value of talent. So I think he's seeing that, but he shared, do you have the shift fillers data? Because he shared this information at a conference earlier this year where he talked about literally it was a stark difference. Do you have that data or do you know what I'm talking about? Like the difference between like job board placements versus
I have it because they're a customer, but I don't have it off the top of my head. But it's I'm sure he'll be fine if I share some of it because he always talks about it as well. But it's absolutely insane. And when you look at it, the crazy part is it's healthcare, it's light industrial, professional, and it's just consistent that the referrals are going to drive a higher GP per placement and a higher candidate value across the board. So I think it's also like we're talking about just the retention and the redeployment. I actually think it even goes beyond that though. And obviously I'm partial, like I'm big on referrals.
sure.
But when you look at where the world's going today, we now have AI job board applications. You have one-click applications. So the quality of talent that you're getting from job boards, the amount of effort you spend going through those candidates, it's insane. And I'm hiring a senior full stack engineer right now. And so I have it's just kind of a fun story is I 3 years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago that I posted same job, same exact position. We're expanding our team right now. And for that same position, spent $300 on LinkedIn. I had 29 applicants. I just posted the same role on LinkedIn and had 597 applicants for the same amount of spend. So like and it's like crazy number of applicants. So that tells you what's going on in the developer
Yeah.
world, right? Like that's
Yeah.
not there's been a lot of layoffs, so market supply and demand has changed. But about a third of those people don't even have the skill set I need. They don't even have the language I need. So there's one-click apply, there's robotic applies, there's people that are just going through and applying as quick as they can. And it's like, how do you sort through that to actually find the quality and deliver the quality to your customer? And customers, like when they're working with a staffing agency, they expect to have a higher quality talent, not something they can just go do themselves on a job board. I'm also working with a staffing agency for this because I wanted to see what it was like in parallel. And I'm almost certainly going to go with their candidate because they're submitting people that are vetted, high quality, they're referred into them. They are people that they know are good versus me sorting through all of these applications and finding that half of them don't even have the skill set I need.
So I think that's actually a really interesting point that you just covered. And I know for the audience here, is there going to be bias? Absolutely. He did found staffing referrals, but he did it because he saw a need in the industry and he's meeting that need. So there's a little bit of a different motivation behind it. But that aside, I think you really hit on something super interesting that maybe recruiters can resonate with if you're watching this is if we make it so easy that anybody can apply, anybody will. And if we get to the point where that becomes the easiest way to fill an order and we're trying to rush to speed, and that's what we're trying to do, then you're literally giving the anybody application to your client and they can do that. And at some point they're going to realize, why am I paying for this? Right? Because it is, again, they could post on Indeed, you could post on Indeed, but they still are going to pay your markup. Right. So I feel like not only, and again, I'm not trying to pit, like job boards are a very important part of the strategic recruiting, process for sure. Why is it, I feel like I've said this, but why is it so hard? Why do so many agencies just not invest in referrals? Like you see this all the time. Like, what are they not doing? Why do they not do it?
There's two things. So one, I think it's like 81% of staffing agencies have digital referral programs. So or I'm sorry, they have referral programs. They're manual, they're hard to track, it's hard to identify when to pay. It's hard to get your recruiters to keep track of the referral and put it in the ATS. So I think there's a difficulty in scaling it and feeling like you can get more out of it. What I hear from staffing agencies all the time is, once a year we do a contest and the recruiters push it and we have this big lift in referrals momentarily. And then we stop talking about it, we stop marketing it, and it goes away. The thing about referrals is that you need to make it easy, transparent. You need to automate the promotion and marketing of it. And when you do that, you can see a consistent lift in the referral program. I was able to pull up, I can tell one part of Dan Shift Filler's data was that they 2023, actually let's go from 2022, 4% of placements came from referrals. And last year, 2024, they're on track for 10% of their placements coming from referrals. And one of the core metrics that we're talking to customers about is just today, go look at, if you're a staffing agency listening to this right now, like go look at your data. What percentage of your placements come from referrals today? Like, is it 10%? What would it mean to your business if you made that 20%? How big of an impact would that have on your profitability? And then on the longer term outlook of that is, what is it going to mean if you get to a spot where 30% of your placements come from referrals, and then Indeed doubles their price versus when 90% of your placements come from referrals, or 10% of your placements come from referrals. Like, these things have a huge impact on profitability today.
So I think, so I love that you actually threw those percentages out and that you're transparent about where Shift Fillers was, because I knew they were intentional. And I had a chance to speak discreetly with Dan about the ROI and the lifetime value of referrals versus job board candidates. And there was a strategic reason why they wanted to actually grow and continue to scale that. So, but I love the fact that you just pointed and said, hey, it's 10%, right? Or what it would be for 20%. Because what we're talking about here, people, is it has to be a part of the pie. It has to be a part of your recruitment funnels, multiple streams. If there's a great book out there years ago called Multiple Streams of Income, maybe we need to rewrite the book called Multiple Streams of Candidates, right? And literally just have a tactical playbook that says, hey, this is really the level that you want to be at with job boards. This is the level you should aim to be at with, referrals. Here's what you should be getting out of redeployment out of your own database. Here's like just out of your database, right? Like, and be looking at that, because what happens when you get over dependent in one source, any one source, not just job boards. I know we're bagging on them a little bit, but if you get over dependent on one source, if there becomes a structural change to that source, that will disrupt you terribly. In the case of job boards today, I've said this again and again, use them strategically. Job boards sell the same candidate over and over and over again to employers, direct employers, to staffing agencies, right? That's happening. And they make it so easy to apply because they need a huge database, because that's their inventory to get you to pay for it. So they basically hook you on that convenience. But when you do that, you're getting the most active job seeker possible. And once you place them to a client, their resume doesn't go away, right? Like they've got no loyalty to you because it was so easy. They're not even invested in the process anymore. And that's why they're churning quicker. And that's what I want to help you protect against. So, okay, so we're talking about this, Dave. I go back. I know I'm off my soapbox now. I get so passionate about this. So it's hard because it's manual. You talked about, and I'm not trying to pitch staffing referrals, but you talked about some cool things like promoting it. How can we promote or automate the marketing of it? How can we automate the education of the program internally and externally to really ramp up a program?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I just want to jump back real quick before we do that, just like, it's not just, Shift was a good example. What we're seeing companies do right now consistently, the reason that there's been demand for our product this year, the reason that we've had movement, is companies are literally saying, how do we increase profitability? They come to us for that. And we're seeing first year growth in referrals anywhere from 30% up to 60%. And then we're seeing steady continued growth in the percentage of placements coming from referrals. In terms of automating and promoting it, there are a handful of things you can do. One, I mean, you should have automation. Like, if you're not using some form of automated marketing for your referral program, you should do that. Like that's the base level of it. If you are like seriously care about this and want to take it to the next level, you need to look at, how do I actually give transparency to the candidate and allow them to share in multiple formats and in ways they want to share. If you look at any modern referral program, I talk about this a lot, but like even when I log into like Chase Bank now, there's a link to refer a friend, and I can track the referral. I can see when I'm going to get paid, and eventually every staffing firm is going to have a digital referral program. Like it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yes.
Staffing industry is typically somewhat late to the game in adopting new tech. This is another example. In the software space, referral programs, I mean, this is like going back to 2010, 2011, like the Dropbox, Airbnb days. Their entire businesses were built off of, I mean, that's a core element of their growth and their virality was through referral programs. Staffing firms today, if you have a good brand, if you have a good net promoter score, if you have good reputation online, and you don't have a digital referral program, you're simply wasting your reputation. You're not leveraging your reputation and driving the referrals that you need to. Just to go back on the automation thing, the one other element is giving candidates links to share and giving them the ability to text their friends with the referrals is a key way to do this. A lot of agencies think, oh, I've got a form online. It's like nobody wants to fill out a form. People want to refer the way they want. They also want to be able to check on the status of the referral payment. And another mistake I see a lot of agencies do is agencies will not pay out in a timely manner. They'll wait for the candidate to reach out to get paid. And all of these things can cause some problems with the referral program and scalability of it.
So I love that you hit that. And one thing that I want to tie together with a comment that you made in the beginning to now is lifetime value. I think that if agencies really understood that the value is in the database, and I'm not trying to commoditize our people, our talent, right? But that, in a sense, we have to look at it like it's our inventory, right? And if you want to get the most money out of that inventory, you have to look at it like that. Like, what is the lifetime value of it? And I see a lot of agencies that are like, oh, I don't want to pay, a $100 referral fee or $200. Like if someone works 40 hours, like I'm not making any money on that. But if they took a step back and they looked at the big picture and realized that those candidates last longer, they're higher quality, they're going to provide a better client experience for you, building that brand recognition, and all these things will roll up to being more referable. And you might have a better chance of redeploying that person if they come off of contract, depending on your situation. Like you're going to get a higher lifetime value on a referred candidate. And if you actually compared the referral fee, the referral bonus, or whatever you're calling it, against the lifetime value, you would realize a much higher return on that resource than what you're actually paying for 500 job applications or job applicants to only place the one. Because spoiler alert, you have to look at it that way. If you actually pay for 500 applications and only get one placement out of it, that's the cost for that one placement, So I don't think they look at it that way. And if you looked at the metrics in that manner, I think you would realize, holy cow, like actually referrals are not as expensive as I thought, and they're a better investment in the future growth of it, because then you can scale. If you try to cheap out on this, you're just going to be running on sand. And if you're stuck in a situation where like flat is the new growth, or you're like, hey, I'm kind of up with the, like if that's where you're at, it's because you're not scaling,
Yeah.
and attrition and things like that are working against you. And this is why. Just like the staffing leader I found, that's what we discovered in her numbers. And she's shifting her strategy to basically diversify because she's over concentrated in the job board space right now.
Just on that note, we had a customer that came to us and like, I don't know if I want to pay $100 referral bonus out. Some of the branches didn't. They were like complaining about it. We went and looked at their data. They were making, it was like $650 more in gross profit for every referral placement versus the Indeeds. $650 additional. And then this is the other thing that people don't think about referrals. It's not just that you're making more. You only pay the referral bonus after the hours are worked. You're only paying it once you're profitable. So you pay
Yeah.
it at 100 hours. So you're not paying for every talent. You get a ton of free candidates in there that you didn't pay anything for that work 50 hours, 70 hours. So it's actually even more profitable than that.
So it's almost like inverse spend in that point. You're basically saying, hey, if I ask you, if I'm like, hey, Dave, do you know anyone? And you're like, yeah, Dan, here's three of my friends. If I place one of them and I got to pay you $100 or a couple $100 and I get three talent, that's great. But I paid $100 for three talent. Whereas in the job board metrics, you're going to pay for 500 and only place one of them. but you got to put the cost of all 500 onto that one placement. That's, yeah, it makes a ton of sense to me. I feel like there's a roadblock there. And I guess my big action item that I have for the people that are watching this before I give you your parting shot word here is look at your recruitment map and literally put down some targets for what percentage of your placements do you want to see come from job boards, and don't go too high with it. Don't go too concentrated. That's dangerous. What percentage do you want to see come from referrals? Set targets, learn how to bolster that recruiting program using some of the tips that Dave just shared with you here. What percentage do you want to come out of your database, right? Because you've got a lot of people that you already paid to get in there. Like, let's use them, right? Let's not pay twice to solve the same problem. So that's the action item. Figure out where you want your recruiting people to come from, and then work to deliver on that and get your ratios in line. And I guarantee you're going to be more profitable and have a better value to your clients and provide a better experience to your clients. So that's my parting shot. Dave, what is your parting shot to the viewers out there that are wondering how and if they should be getting, more focused on referrals right now?
Well, I just on the metric you just shared, if it's not only figure out where you want to go, like if you're at 10% today, shoot for 15% next year, or 14% next year. But the top customers in light industrial, we have two case studies, but WSI, they're, I think 33% of their placements are coming from referrals. My work choice, over 30, they've had 19,000 referral candidates, and over 30% of their placements are coming from referrals. So like light industrial, be shooting for the 30+% range. Healthcare, we see 40 to 70, like in the top ranges for people that are really doing it well. So there's a lot of room for growth in terms of where you can be sourcing your talent from. And then I just think if you're looking at the future and how do you deliver high quality talent, how do you increase profitability, it's simple math. That's it. I mean, like if you sit down and do the math and look at it and say, okay, where should we focus our efforts? It becomes pretty simple. It's like this is where we're going to get more bang for our buck. It helps us deliver more value to the customer. By delivering more value to the customer, by having people stay on contract longer, we're going to be a more profitable business, and we're going to scale and grow faster. So I think it's look at your business strategically. Look at the data.
I love it, man. That's a good spot for us to end. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I could keep this conversation going. So if you ever want to pick this back up and switch over to the Staffing Show podcast, I would love to do that because I've got a lot of continuing thoughts on that. But yeah, I appreciate you, my friend, and sharing the knowledge that you're seeing out there about referrals, because agencies need to bolster it. We're getting too dependent on job boards, and it's hurting us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Dan. Great talking with you.
Good seeing you, my friend.